Hello, you beautiful people. Welcome to the Marcy's Magic podcast, where I, your host, Marcy, will be talking to you all about your spiritual evolution, God, love, and so much more. In today's episode, I've got Emily with me, and we're going to be talking to you all about her POR philosophy, what it is, why you should implement it, and what you need in order for it to be the most successful, abundant portal that it is. Emily is my best friend, an incredible woman. She is the founder of the Portal of Receiving Philosophy, and she is just the most amazingly embodied example of POR in the works. So I'm going to hand over to her to introduce herself.
What a nice introduction. I find it so hard to introduce myself and actually capture the value and profundity, if that's even a word, of the work I do because it is quite literally in the metaphysical realm. Like it's so spiritual that sometimes it's so hard to articulate. But what I will say is that I work with business owners to heal their relationship receiving, which includes overgiving and people pleasing and perfectionism, and release those conditions and expectations of themselves so that they can receive more. And the reason why this is so important is because in the business field or in the business coaching or business mentoring field, we're often told what to do, but we're not often asked, do you feel deserving of receiving what's on the other side of that? And do you feel deserving of that being easy? And do you feel deserving of doing it without all these conditions? So my work bridges the gap between the masculine of strategy and the feminine of do you feel deserving of actually receiving that outcome? So yeah, business and receiving mentor, that's who I am.
Amazing. I love that so much. Um, so can you tell us a little bit more about what is Portal of Receiving?
I can. Okay. So when I was doing my masters, I actually had a really bad time doing my masters. I didn't really enjoy it. It was quite stressful. I learned a lot, but it was hard going. And I actually at the time didn't know the reason for it. A lot of the time we look for reasons, and I didn't know the reason until maybe like over a year later. And now this philosophy is like quite big. A lot of people know what it is. But at the time I was studying Buddhist philosophy and the nature of desire and whether desire and wanting more is the cause of suffering. And there's a lot of philosophers that disagree on that. But even now, I think there's a lot of disagreement about, is wanting more money and is making more money actually causing more suffering? And my conclusion was no, wanting more is not, but your attachment to receiving it is. So you being attached to the outcome and whether that outcome makes you feel more or less worthy than you already are is the root of this suffering. And it goes far and wide into the world. If you look at people who become CEOs and earn, I don't know, let's call it the millions, they genuinely find that their happiness is not like there's not more happiness. There's more freedoms, there's more choices. But actually, what happens is the more we attach our self-worth and our sense of self, and the Buddhists call it no self. They think there's no self, and I love that. To how much money we're making, to those outcomes we desire to receive in our lives and in our businesses, the more we will suffer. And when we get rid of that attachment, not only do we receive more, but we realize we've been worthy all along. So that's the entire philosophy.
I love that so much, and it's so beautiful to see how it's grown, but also like the origins and overall its functioning. And I have Emily has a membership for the Portal of Receiving, and that was my first ever investment that I've made within business. And it's really interesting actually because what you said just then, of course, this is incredible for people who are tend to be people pleasers, overgiving, feel unworthy, and all of that. Um, which wasn't how I was when I joined. So that was a very interesting reflection. I was never those people, but the way that POR worked for me and the way that I adapted it, it still changed my life. So I'm just thinking, oh my God, if there's people listening who are people pleasers, who do struggle with receiving and feeling worthy, they need that so much. And the transformations must be just absolutely humongous because it changed my life and I didn't have those issues.
Literally, I don't know one person who hasn't got results off the back of this philosophy. So
Yeah.
let's imagine like there's a hustler. I can literally show you slash teach you because they are teachings. Like I struggle with, do you say, oh, I'm going to teach you? Yeah, I'm going to say that because it's a philosophy. We've got to teach it and showcase it. But ultimately, I can show you how to do less and receive more. And I don't mean not doing. This is where I think a lot of people do get it wrong is they're like, oh, we're just like lean back queens. We're absolutely not just lean back queens. We show you how to do less more intentionally, thereby enhancing your chances of receiving, or believing that money can enter your life unexpectedly when you're detached from those outcomes. So the origins of the philosophy was more centered around overgiving and people pleasing and becoming a receiving portal in your life. It ended up going into money mindset and healing your money mindset. Um, like eliminating the need to over strategize your business, trusting that money can come from unexpected ways that aren't just your business income. It has this profound effect, and I feel like I don't have any control on that effect. It's different from client to client, but it works for every single client.
Absolutely. Because it's just so potent and so real. And I think it's an incredible thing to highlight that it's not about just becoming a lean back queen and working 1 hour a week um, and receiving all the money. Like, that's not how it works. And I think that's a lot of people join the business industry and set up their Instagram pages and they see these posts of like, here's how I work 1 hour a day and I make 10K months. And they see those and they're like, oh, I want a piece of that. And it's just so much bigger than simply leaning back. There's, I know you're very big on the masculine and feminine energies within that. And one can't exist without the other. So you can't just be all in passive, leaning, restive, intuitive in order
Mm-hmm.
for that energy to be brought into your life, there does need to be some level of structure, stability, um, creating safety and providing for this feminine energy. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about why do you think this is needed? What results does that create?
Mm. Well, first of all, I don't see anyone else in the industry doing it. Like, I see a lot of like manifestation coaches, which I'd actually love your perspective on because I know you've created content around this.
Many, yep.
Plug in that piece of content. But I think, yeah, there's so much out there around ease and flow and a lean back business and soft girl era and Moscow era, whatever the fuck that means. I don't even know what that means. I just know I'm not part of it. Um, what else? Yeah, there's a lot of like manifestation stuff. And I don't want my philosophy to be confused with that because it's research led and I think it's a science because if you look at the experimental phase we've gone through for like 2, 3 years, it works across the board. Like it's not
Yeah.
going to be maybe work, maybe not work. But I think the reason why we need it in this industry is because I think a lot of people have lost self-trust. They think that being told what to do is going to be enough to get them results, but they're not looking at the intention behind that doing. She's having a moment. She's
I'm
having a moment.
having so many moments.
So like I could tell you, oh my God, this is going to make you 100K and it won't make you 100K because you can't back the action you're going to take, or you don't think you're good enough to take the action, or you don't feel good enough for your delivery, which is a whole interesting segment of the philosophy here. And I've worked with a few clients on this because they're the most qualified coaches out there, got all their like papers signed off, probably got more qualifications than me, but because they don't feel good enough in their delivery and they're so scared of rejection, they're not even selling their services enough. So selling was never the problem. Having the right offer, in quotation marks, was never the problem. The action that they're actually taking or not taking was never the problem. It's the beliefs that are fueling that action or lack of action that are leading to a lack of results. And there's just so many segments of it, but our industry isn't set up to help people feel good enough. In a way, it's set up to pull people down, focus on what they're not doing that's good enough, buy from that energy, and they still don't feel good enough. So why people need the philosophy is because the foundation of building your best business, I'm going to get shivers here, the best business, the most profitable business, the business that you love that allows you to live your life is feeling fucking good enough. That is the baseline. If you don't feel that, they may work for you for a short time, but it's not long term. It won't be sustainable. And that's why you need POR.
Yep. And that feeling of good enough, that's just the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Because let's not even talk about being more than enough. Like
Yeah.
feeling just good enough. That is the bare minimum.
Yeah.
And I was giggling to myself when you were talking about um, people are drawn to certain offers that promise to get them their results, yada yada, because they're looking for their quick fixes. They're looking for someone to tell them what's happening because they're lacking that self trust. That is exactly what my email was mirroring yesterday. I
Oh my
sent an
God.
email to my mailing list yesterday, just reflecting on the fact that since I opened up my target audience to be everyone who is pulled towards my work on a personal level as opposed to just purely business coaching. Less people are reading my emails. In the past, there would be like 60% open rate on average.
Yeah.
And now some of them have gotten like, it's like 30, and I'm like, oh, what's happening here? And I've sort of done some observations around it and really compared different emails. And actually, I do really believe it is the fact that if I tell you, hey, actually, I'm going to ignore the sentence I've just said, it is a lot more appealing to your nervous system to invest in their practical how to's because you're like, well, yeah, this is going to fulfill my desires. This is going to help me reach my business goals. And the personal work, the inner work, the self belief, the self trust, all of that is not seen as a part of it. And I couldn't agree more with what you said about, you may get the results, but they're not going to be long term because you'll get them and you won't know how to act. Like, if these people just suddenly sold out all the offers, had 10K drop into the bank account, they would be so dysregulated. They wouldn't know what to do with that. They wouldn't know how to then treat things going forward. And that's why that intention behind what you're doing is so important. And I am super big on the fact that the inner work needs to come first, because no
Mm,
matter what money you earn, unless you can hold it and make space for it and make it long term, it's just not going to hold.
this, literally this. And this is why people feel like that big income goal when it's hit is a fluke or a coincidence because it's not embodied and it's not integrated.
Yes.
And it's why from one day to the next, like you said, you're going to be like, what do I do now? When you've got self-trust, you don't question what you need to do, you do it. You do it when it's messy, you do it when you don't know if it's going to get you to the outcome, you do it when it's uncertain, you do it because you desire it and you trust what you have to say, and even you trust that it's going to convert. Like, I can honestly say I started my business without any mentors. Oh, also to backtrack, if people are in this spiral of a lack of self-trust, what will happen is you invest, you receive the how, you implement the how, and you'll constantly have to reinvest because you constantly believe the answers exist outside of you. And then the money you make will be, where is it? Where's it gone? Right? Because it's, again, not integrated. But I started my business I had a life coach at the time, but I didn't have a business mentor, and I started without any evidence. I didn't wait for the evidence. I didn't wait to be qualified. I didn't wait for someone to give me the green light. I just did it. And I really think that's why my offers sold so fucking easily. Like, I didn't used to use the word ease as much as I do now, but they did sell easily because I kept going no matter what, not because of hustle or punishment, because I had self-trust. And there was periods where, like, I had sold out my membership. I'd like got so many people in my masterclasses, and I remember generating my first £200 for my first ever masterclass when I'd only just recently started a business. and thought, wow, like I really got something here. But I never had to be taught how to trust myself. It exists within us all. It's not something that can be like taught. It can, but it can't. It's something that's lived and embodied. And that's how we recreate ease if it's been lost along the way. It's reconnecting with your intuition and self trust 100%.
Mm, I love that so much. And yeah, self trust all the way. I am going to sidetrack here a little bit because I feel like I'm just keep on being pulled in that direction. So it was the element of ease and what I said earlier about I feel like some people just launch a business because they feel like that'll be the easy way to make money. And that's not the case. It gets to be easy, but only after you've reached a certain point. And from a very practical and a masculine point of view, even if you have the all the self-belief in the world and you're like, I know my value, these are my services, and let's say you do the marketing for it, but people need to see your value. And in order for people to actually give you their money, they need to know that you are the person that you say you are. And I think a lot of people forget that when they um, start the businesses, because they sort of think, okay, well, if I do the marketing, and even if they're behind the offers, unless people know that they will actually have something on the other side of giving you their money, um, they're just not going to do it. And I really think, yeah, that's a very often overlooked aspect because a lot of people attach to the idea of like, oh yeah, it gets to be easy. I just tell people about my services and that'll be enough.
Mm. And it could also be that they're so attached to the outcome that they're waiting on evidence for confirmation to keep going. I find that a lot with people who slow down with the marketing and the sales, and clients specifically who, or people who've come into like my short-term offers who are like not making as much sales as they want. And I ask them how often they've sold. And it really is that much of a simple question because it's hard in the sense that you've got to be resilient as fuck. You have to kind of what's that word, like it's kind of like immersion therapy into the world of rejection, because
Mm.
every single day, no matter the evidence that you receive that you've made a sale or not, you act as though you are going to make a sale. Like it's, I think that's what makes it hard. Like I find being in this industry for me is an obvious choice. Like it doesn't even feel like a choice. It feels like it's been God given. Like it's not a choice. But this is harder than anything I've ever done. But
Yeah.
then what keeps you going is the fact that you're willing to do it without evidence. And I think a lot of people have lost that. Because I remember 3 years ago when I first started this industry, and I remember a few people that were like in the industry at the same time who are still here. And I think what they have that other people who drop out don't is the knowing they will keep going no matter what, because they don't need the external validation of an immediate sale or immediate evidence. And so they could be selling the same offer for 2 weeks, they haven't received like, I don't know, 3,000 in full. They sell on the next day after that 2 weeks and bang, it drops
Yeah.
because they don't need that external validation. But yeah, I absolutely agree with all the things about marketing. Like we've made it I was going to say a bit, we've made it way too personal as well. Like we have got so fucking invested in, yeah, like how personal it is. Like let's imagine someone else in an office job who's doing marketing as their job, and maybe it does affect the money they're going to make. Maybe it's the reason why they have more or less commission, but they're going to go to work and they're going to take the action. And then, yeah, they're going to want the outcome, but they're not going to be attached to it. Why are we attached to this industry? Self fucking worth. Again, that's the fuel. That's become the fuel. And it's so unsustainable.
Yeah. And I actually think your self worth is not gonna be it's not gonna exist unless you're actually being authentic with yourself, unless you're intentional with what you're doing. Because you could give someone the most perfect mm, method to, let's say, launched a service and sold out, and like 1000% it will manifest. Like, you're like, no, trust me, like when you do this, it will happen. But unless it is something that you actually want to do and something that you're meant to be doing, maybe it will happen, but it's not going to happen long term. And this is why I have a problem with how many people join the industry and think it just gets to be easy, because they're coming at it from the wrong intentions. Because if you're doing it just because it's easy and you think it's an easy platform, easy way to reach people, your intentions aren't pure. Your intentions aren't to actually spread your gifts to change people's lives.
Yep. And and you can feel that energy through the screen. You can feel that energy when people sell. You can feel that energy when, even when you've got a client who is struggling to make money and you know that it's their intentions, and you have to tell them, you have to ask them what their intentions are. Because you're right, a lot of people join this industry because they want to make money, but you want to make money, and like, you can want to make money. You can have that desire, but is
There's
it
nothing
matched with
wrong with
the,
that.
yeah, both. The unconditionality of, and I want to change lives, I want to impact. And that's where self-trust comes from, because you never burn out of, or you never like burn all the fuel of wanting to change lives. When that's like part of who you are, because I do that outside of this industry, I do that via teaching. That's why I never burn out to tutor people either, because it's coming from the same intention of to help, to change lives. If your intention is to change lives and give value every day, you're going to find it easy, quote unquote, to make money, because your intention, I don't want to say is right or wrong, but you've got a fuel that's not just money. If your only fuel is money, you're going to burn out quick, you're going to give up fast. There needs to be another intention that unites those two things.
Yeah, exactly. And it has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. Because if it isn't actually reflective of what you feel right now and what you desire, it's not going to happen.
No, a lot of people have fallen out of this industry in the last 1 or 2 years, and I actually am not surprised. I'm not surprised at all, because probably it wasn't meant for them, or they weren't willing to tap into the inner work. There's one or two reasons there. They didn't do the inner work because it was hard and they avoided it, or it was never meant for them and it was just a portal of income for them.
Yep. So this is where I'd like to segue into the manifestation. Um, I do have a problem with manifestation, actually, because yes, I agree with it. Like, I agree with the law of manifestation. I completely back the manifestation methods, but it just makes me a little bit cringe because it's become such a thing of like, manifest this, manifest that, and everyone's just so driven towards reaching their desires, acquiring certain goals. And I'm like, your desires should be in the now. The only thing that is real right now is literally just right this moment. And I think part of the reason why people burn out in the industry is because they constantly focus on their desires. And is that it is the attachment piece.
Mm.
But I think even if they're not like obsessively attached to the desire and the goal, essentially by continuing to manifest, they're not wholeheartedly accepting the very present moment. So they're not acknowledging the work that they've done already. And I think that when you do too much manifesting, too much releasing on a full moon and welcoming in energies on the new moon, people close themselves off. And that is a real shame, because every single one of us has a different soul purpose, and the soul purpose is um, expressed in various different ways. And I really believe that by focusing so much on manifestation, you close yourself off from God's plan. Like, your plan could be to make, let's say, 5K months, like a regular thing, doing this thing. But when you actually let go, when you surrender into the now and you develop a relationship with God, you'll find that God's plan for you is so much more abundant, with that comes with so much more ease, so much more joy and love. And that is my problem with manifestation, because it can make you really close-minded. It can make you attached to the goal, and I think it really takes you away from the present moment. And anything that takes you away from the present moment and what is real for you right this very second is not very godly.
Mm.
And another thing that I want to say is, my other problem with it is that, you know, we do the manifesting and then we receive the thing and we're like, oh my god, I manifested this. Thanks, universe. And it's like, absolutely. I always give thanks to the universe, always send my gratitude and prayers to God for providing me with everything. You know, I do that before I eat every meal. Um, but it makes a lot of people not take the credit for the things that they've worked for. And that bothers me, because that really um that can really harm your self-belief if you constantly outsource the credit for all your achievements, because you're essentially being like, oh yeah, no, I didn't do this, it was God that did all of this. And I would say a lot of what I've achieved has been because God helped me, but I am still a human, so I have a choice to either say yes or no to God. And while, yes, absolutely grateful that God has guided me to where I am right now, I'm still giving myself the praise for being so open, for being so flexible, for doing the hard things, for going and doing His work.
I love this because this kind of goes into the realm of like, can surrender to God coexist with free will? And like the debate about like, if you surrender, does that remove human free will? Which is obviously a massive debate. But I love what you embody because you are someone who surrenders. To me, you're God. You're the messenger of God, right? Like I really see you and feel you like that. But I also notice where you call yourself out on your bullshit when you do the hard thing, like you said, like you're not it's not one or the other. Like the two things were meant to be coexisting. So I'd actually love your perspective here on like how does one surrender and believe they have free will for things to change? Like what's the relationship between the two things?
Yeah, oh my god, I love this so much. Um, so, a food for thought for everyone listening is that when you're scared to surrender, you're. Oh my god, I'm getting shivers. This is so fun. Um, when you're scared to surrender, it's because you're scared of releasing control. I don't believe that as humans we have control, we have choice. I really believe the only thing that exists is right this moment. Yes, I know tomorrow's gonna come, unless something tragic happens, but I know tomorrow I will wake up and I'm gonna go into town and have brunch with my friend. Like, those are the guaranteed plans. And I'm committed to that because I see the vision. I know that tomorrow I will be waking up early, hopping on the bus and meeting my friend. But I have a choice to not go. But also, um, being in the present moment opens me up to being humble enough to recognizing I don't always know the best. What I think a lot of people struggle with when it comes to trusting the intuition is, let's say your intuition tells you to get on the bus, right? And then something happens and you're like, for God's sake, like I should have just gotten the tram because then that wouldn't have happened. And that makes you doubt your intuition. But actually, your intuition took you to that place, just not for the reason that you intended it to. So there's certain things that you need to learn, and that's why your intuition leads you there. But people have this misconception, if that's even the right word, that your intuition is the source of, all the beautiful, amazing things. And to an extent, yes, it is. But sometimes you need to learn things the hard way, because there's no way that things can be just easy in life. So, sort of sidetrack here. But balancing their free will and the choice is essentially recognizing these intuitive nudges, whether you want to see them as coming from yourself or coming from God, whatever it is, but recognizing it's at the end of the day, it's your choice to act upon that. And you literally don't have to. But then you have to live with the fact that whatever the outcome is, you know? So, to give you an example, it's such a weird example. A few weeks ago, I had this intuitive nudge to get drunk with my friend. And, I don't drink. So I was literally like, what are you on about? Like, what do you mean, intuition? You're telling me to get drunk. It doesn't make sense. So, in my mind, I was like, I'm not doing it. Like, it literally does not make any sense for that to have happened. And I almost didn't, because I was like, I don't want to feel like shit tomorrow. Like, I don't want to pay the consequences of it. But then I did, because I was like, right, my intuition is saying this for a reason. And let me tell you, it became so clear why that happened, which I'm not going to discuss here. But basically, it's what literally needed to happen. And what followed that was probably one of the most heartbreaking and transformational events and periods of my life that I don't think it would have happened if I hadn't made that choice. And I would have lived with the consequences, because I wouldn't have known different. If I decided to ignore my intuition, I wouldn't have known what would have been on the other side of it. But I would have still lived with that. So it's about, for me, the balance comes from how committed are you to yourself, to loving yourself, to living life in accordance to what is true and authentic to you. Because there has been times where I have decided to ignore my intuition, and then later on been like, oh, she did want the best for me, but I wasn't willing to listen. But I think a lot of people get caught up with feeling like if they surrender to God, that they have to give it all up. But if that's what God wants, then it's clearly for a reason, because sometimes you don't know what's best for you. You think you do, but then later on, when things go not how you wanted, it's revealed that actually it's a good job that it didn't work out that way. So yeah, it's such a complex topic, and I feel like I want to explore so many avenues with this one. I'm trying my best to keep it concise and relevant. But for me, the surrender also comes from this trust, right? Trust to God to look after me and to know the best, but also trust for myself that even if I decide to not follow my intuitive nudges, that I'm gonna be fine. And it's that active choice, it's that active participation in making a choice. Because if I decide to do something that is not right for me, I know I can handle the consequences and then learn. Because if you don't learn, you will be forced to learn.
Oh, there's so many parts of it, and I love every part of it. I love every part of it. Um, I have an example actually of how this works in my life recently, because it's actually nuts how this works. So I don't know if you watch my Instagram stories. It was a few weeks ago. But I was going to my tutoring job that day, and it was a really nice day outside, and I'd woken up early, which is not really like me, but I did. And I thought, I'm ready early. I'm going to leave the house early. When I tell you that is not me. Today I was late. It's not me usually. But I just had this, it wasn't even a feeling, but I guess it was. I was like, I'm just going to leave the house early. So I get on the train. I'm like, so I gonna like check the time. I was basically running 30 minutes ahead of time before the tutoring was due to start. And I get to Victoria Station, and all I need to do is switch lines and then I've got 2 more stops to this school. That line had closed. So that, like, 2 stops basically was the Victoria line. So I got to Victoria Station, you've got to switch Victoria line to go to the 2 stops. And that had closed. And usually I go into panic about that. Like, I'd usually be like, oh my God, directions, like which tube am I going to go to? How am I going to get there? Check the time, and I still had that half an hour that I'd made up, because I had left a half an hour early because it was a nice day. And I thought, why not? We'll see what happens.
Mm.
Literally that mindset, see what happens. I checked Google Maps. I called the tutoring company, and it happened that the walk time was like 26 minutes to walk.
No way.
Yeah. So I went through the tube exit, Victoria, and I walked all the way with no panic, no stress, because I had the perfect amount of time. I crossed the Thames. I took videos of the Thames. It was amazing. It was sunny. And I got there with a couple minutes to spare. Bang on. Bang on the time I needed to be there. Now tell me that is not that is not intuition, because I was
How?
mind blown. I was like, it doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't make sense. Why I could have done so much else in that half an hour before I left the house. Usually I do, I leave things to the last minute. Why that day I had chosen differently, and it had worked out.
Oh my God. That is so beautiful. And I think, like, it is essentially you exercised your free will to listen to your intuition. And this is why I'm so big on being present and checking in with what's happening for you right this very moment. Because if, let's say, you were incredibly focused on business, you were like, right, okay, half an hour spare, let me do some coaching, let me smash out some posts or whatever, that wouldn't have happened.
Yep. Which is when you're operating from the mind, isn't it, as well? Like, what to do, how to fill my time. Oh, there's some space, let's fill it. I was the least bit concerned about how to fill that time. I was on the right timeline. And I think you're right. Like, when we're connected with that present moment, the more intuitive we are, the more we cultivate self trust. But when you spoke earlier, you know what made me think? It made me think, do you feel good enough to trust yourself, or do you feel good enough to follow your intuition? Because if we don't feel good enough, we usually go for like the quick fix or the logical thing. Like, sometimes I just refuse to use Google Maps because it is actually the biggest liar. Like, I don't want to know how. I don't want to know how long it will take me, because it ends up lying when I trust Google Maps over my own intuition. And usually my intuition gets me places on time, but Google Maps doesn't. So I think and I know that's such a fucking weird example, but it's like, it's not even like, do you trust your intuition? Do you feel good enough to try over what your mind is saying?
You have to have a certain level of self belief and confidence, but the
Yeah.
two are intrinsically connected. So the
Mm.
more you try, the more you will feel confident in yourself. Because at the start of my journey with my intuition, I didn't really know what I was doing. Like, my confidence was incredibly average, And my intuition was trying to speak to me, but I wasn't really aware what it was. I wasn't quite sure. And I don't think it needs to be a matter of feeling good enough or not. It's a matter of assessing what was happening before and after.
Mm.
Because when you bring yourself back into your body and notice what happens, you'll see that there were signs that you should have gone a different way.
Mm.
Whether we mean this like with actual directions or decision making, because it doesn't have to mean anything about you. If you see your intuition as like your internal life compass, your internal life GPS, that's all that there is. It doesn't ask you to be confident, it doesn't ask you to believe in yourself, but it does ask you to believe in it, in what it's
Mm.
saying. And yes, in order to do that, you do have to get through certain mental hurdles, but I think it doesn't need to be that complicated because you can have fun with it. You can test it out,
Mm.
which is, oh my god, so interesting that we're having this because literally last night, oh my god, you know, I have this journal where I write a lot of magical things in, and yesterday I sent Emily a snippet that I wrote last July of something that we did, and I have not touched that journal in probably about 5 or 6 months because I didn't bring it with me to Poland. So this was my first time using it, and one of the first entries from it was I decided to test my not intuition, but mine and Emily's telepathy, and I sent her a piece of food. No, yeah, I was like, I'm gonna send you. Did I send a food?
I can't remember if it was food or fruit.
I think it was food because in the note I said interesting that we both said fruit. So
Yeah.
maybe it was that. There was something to do with that. And the you didn't pick it up correctly, which is like obviously that's so fine. Um but then 20 minutes after, you just sent me a random reel and it was about a watermelon, which is what I sent you. And I was like, you are kidding me. So you
Right.
got the message, but just in a slightly different way than we intended it to.
Yeah. And I found that's happened for us so many times. Like when
Yeah.
we've messaged each other the same thing, or I've answered a question that you were about to ask me. Like
Yes.
it's so cool. I was gonna say it's interesting, but it's cool. I like it always it not well, it doesn't always, but most of the time it works.
Yeah. And it still amazes me because I'm like, wow, this is so cool that this is very real, but it's because we're not attached. We're just like we're so open. We're like, let's just see what happens.
Yeah. We've done it before actually as well when we went to that Spanish restaurant in London and we said we were going to get something for free. What did we get for we held hands and we were like, yeah, we were
Threw
open
out
to
a
receiving
spell.
something. Was it a smell?
No, we just threw out a little spell into the
Oh,
universe to be
yeah,
like,
we
right,
did.
we're gonna receive things for free, and
It was
within a
olives,
month,
wasn't it?
yeah, and bread,
Oh yeah.
yeah, free
Um,
olives and bread, which they usually charge for,
yeah.
and then the guy paid for our taxi.
Wait, who did?
The random guy we met at the train station when we were getting a taxi back.
Did he? Why have I forgotten this?
Yeah, he was like living in your village.
Oh my god, yes, Mark. He
Sure,
did.
yeah,
Oh my god, yeah. Oh, that is just nuts. I love it. Great examples of how that works.
yeah. Oh my god. Amazing. I love that so much. So let's start wrapping up, even though I'd love to explore a million other topics. Um, so, on a final note, is there anything, any kind of tips, guidance, or points of reflections that you feel like we've missed off that you just want to throw into the mix? And if not, where can we find you and how can we work with you?
Okay, so I think based on our conversation, what I'd love everyone who's listening to know is that the more connected you are to your intuition, the more you will receive. And it really is that simple. So maybe not so much easy to connect with your intuition, but it is a simple equation. And once you figure it out, you'll feel like you've found this little secret sauce that nobody else has. But yet, nearly every single one of my clients has that. And I think everyone deserves to feel that. So, yeah, one thing to take away would be the more you connect with your intuition, the more you learn how to retrust yourself. Because it's just a retrusting, it's deconditioning from everything you've been told, either by the industry or in life, about how hard money is to make and all these big, big questions. The more you do that and come back to who you are beyond all that conditioning and reconnect with your intuition, the easier it's going to be for you to receive. So start paying attention to all the ways you've been told you have to do things to receive, who you need to be to receive, what makes you more or less deserving, because on the other side of remembering you are already deserving without the result, before the result arrives, the more likely it is to arrive. So that would be my biggest point of reflection. And then in terms of working with me, we're actually reopening doors for the membership that Marcy mentioned in January. So if you wanted to be part of that membership where you master your money mindset, but also reconnect with your intuition so that you can receive more in your life and business and heal your relationships from a place of unconditionality, join there. And that is in my link in bio on my Instagram at I am Emily Jane Taylor. Alternatively, we have one-to-one spots as well, but this is for the deeper, more transformational work because, like Marcy said as well, none of this is a quick fix or like overnight success. And I don't want to give you that false hope or promise because there is deep work required. So if you're wanting to separate your identity from your business, you sever the attachment between you and the result, master your money mindset, and actually create sustainable strategies and self-trust to create the most success you've ever seen without being your entire life and your entire identity, then I would go for one-to-one. But other than that, this has been an amazing conversation, and we are doing God's work. We are doing it.
We surely are. And oh my God, that was so beautiful. Thank you so much for listening, and let us know what you think in the comments.